Hi everyone and welcome back to this video. In this video we're going to go ahead and implement JWT Authentication. But for the last video we went ahead and created a route that was to enable us to create user accounts. In this video we're going to go ahead and implement a route that's going to log in our users. So the thing with logging in our users with JWT Authentication is that instead of giving our users a session, we're actually going to give them JWTs. Now these JWTs or Json Web Tokens are stored on the client and they enable the users be able to access the different protected routes on our application. So we're going to look into how to create these tokens and how to secure routes so that we may require to access that route by providing a token. We're also going to look into how to generate refresh tokens, as they are going to help us to create new tokens in case we have our token expired. So the first thing I'm going to do is to install the package that we're going to use. So in this video, we're going to use FastAPI JWT Auth, which is a tool that's going to enable us to carry out JWT authentication in a very easy way. It provides us with the various methods that are going to help us to create the tokens, as well as to protect the different routes, as well as to also generate new tokens in case our token expires. So I'm going to pull up my terminal right here. I'm using bash. So what I'm going to do is to install. So make sure you're in your virtual environment. So I'm going to install FastAPI JWT Auth. So after installing FastAPI JWT Auth, we are going to go ahead and set it up so that it works with our application. Now, FastAPI JWT Auth has been installed, so I'm going to go ahead and set it up to work with our application. So what I'm going to do is to head over to our main.py where we have our main application. I'm going to go to our main.py and I'm going to go ahead and set up our FastAPI JWT Auth. I'm going to head over to schemas first and I create a special class or a special model which is going to basically help us to set up our FastAPI JWT Auth. I'm going to come to schemas.py and the first thing I'm going to do is to create a class. So I'm going to create a class which is going to be called settings. And this setting class is also going to be a pydantic class. So we're going to say it's going to inherit from base model. After that, we are going to provide the following setting. So the setting we're going to provide here is going to be our auth JWT secret key. So the auth JWT secret key is what FastAPI JWT Auth is going to help to sign our tokens and be able to help us to decode those tokens. So what we're going to do is to provide this as auth, going to be auth JWT. Actually, it's going to be auth JWT secret key. And this is going to be a string. And then we are going to generate a string that we're going to use in place of our auth JWT secret key. So one of the ways you can do that with Python is by using the secrets module. So what I'm going to do is to pull up my terminal and open up the Python interpreter. So I'll say Python 3, actually say Python, which import secrets. Then I'm going to go ahead and generate a random hexadecimal values. So I'm going to say a token. This is going to be token. Then I'm going to generate a hexadecimal value. This is going to provide us with this hexadecimal value. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. After copying it, I'm going to come and paste it right here. So we've been able to provide our auth JWT secret key. I'm going to save this and I'm going to stop the terminal with Ctrl Z. I'm going to close it. Now the next thing I'm also going to do is to go ahead and create a schema that's going to validate the data that we shall use for logging in. In this case, we're going to use a username and a password to be able to generate our tokens. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is to come, also create the class for login. So I'm going to call this the login model. This is also going to inherit from this model. So now after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is provide the username, which is going to be a string. We're also going to provide a password, which is going to be a string. After doing this, I'm going to go ahead and configure FastAPI JWT Auth to work with our application. So I head over to main.py And within main.py, what I'm going to do is to import the auth.jwt class. So the auth.jwt class is going to provide us with these different methods that are going to allow us to use JWT to generate JWTs, to protect routes, to generate refresh tokens, and so on. What I'll do is to come right here. I'm going to say from FastAPI JWT Auth. I'm going to import, in this case, we're going to import the auth.jwt class. Now we're going to go ahead and load the configurations that are going to be specific to our auth JWT. So I'm going to come right here, and what I'll do is to say at auth JWT, and this we're going to call a method on this class, which is going to be load config. So this load config takes in the setting. So what we shall do is to just simply write a function that we're going to decorate with this load config function. And what this is going to do is to simply create an instance of our settings class. So what I'll do is to actually import it. So I'll come and say from schemas, we are going to import settings. And after doing this, I'm going to simply come here, and what I'll do is to say get config. Now what this is going to return, an instance of our settings class. So what I'll do is to say going to be settings. After doing this, we are going to make use of our auth JWT within our application. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and go within our auth routes and then make use of our auth JWT. So I'm going to come within auth routes, and I'm going to create a route that's going to create our login. So right now we have a sign up route. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a login route. So let me call this the login route. What I'm going to do is say at auth router. So in this case, our method is going to be post, since we're going to send data to the server. So I'll say post, and then this will be slash login. So right here, I'm going to come and write the view function that's going to send our request. So I'm going to say sync def. Then this is going to be login. So I'm going to call it login, and then I'll pass it for now. So the first thing we're going to do is to make sure that we pass our auth JWT as a dependency. So to do that, I'm going to come and import our auth JWT class. I'm going to say from FastAPI JWT Auth, we are going to import our auth JWT class. Now after doing that, I'm going to come within our login view function. What I have to specify is that we are going to make use of our model. So remember, we created our model that's going to allow us to validate the data we shall pass in. So I'm going to go ahead now auth routes and also import the login model. So I also come and say from schemas, we're going to import our login. Now after doing that, I'm going to come right here and I'll specify that the data that we need for this request is going to be our user, who is going to be of type login model. So we shall expect validated data from our login model. And then the next thing we are also going to create an authorization dependency. To do that, I'm going to say authorize, and then this is going to be of type auth JWT, and this is going to be a dependency. So I'm going to say equals depends. I need to go ahead and import depends from FastAPI. I need to come right here and I'll say what depends. And after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and create a different logic that's going to allow us to log in a user. So since we are getting a user in form of our login model, we are expecting to get a username and a password. So you need to go ahead and be able to validate or be able to check if that user exists. So you need to carry out a query for our database that's going to check whether this user exists, provided their email. What I'm going to do is to say db user. So we're going to create a variable called db user that's going to have a session. So in this case, we're going to get session. Then what we're going to do is to query. So I'll query for the user, and then I'll go ahead and filter by So in this case, we shall filter by the username since we have provided the username. And if that username is equal to the username provided, so in this case, it's going to be user.username. So what we shall do is to come right here and say dot first. So in this case, we want to get the first object that has that username. So what we shall do is to check if this user exists, then we are going to go ahead and provide a JWT. And if they don't exist, we are going to return an HTTP exception that's basically going to show us that this user does not exist. So to do that, I'm simply going to come right here and I'm going to say db user. So this is going to be a user object. So let's say if db user is none, actually what we can do is to say if db user, if the user exists, and let's say and db user, actually what we can do is to import the check password hash from Maxhook, just like we did. So actually we already have it here, and it's going to help us to check a password against the given hashed value. So in this case, what we need is to check the user's hashed password in the database and check it with the password we're going to provide. So what we shall do is to say and check password. So this returns a boolean, so we need the password. So in this case, we're going to say db user. But in this case, we shall say password, and then we shall also check with the password that we've provided. So this will be user dot password. So if this condition passes, then what we shall do is to create the access and the refresh token. So to do that, I'm going to come and create a variable called the access token. The access token is going to be the access token created by auth JWT. So in this case, we're going to say authorize. So this is going to be dot create. So in this case, it's going to be create access token, and then we shall specify the subject. So in this case, we're going to specify the subject or the identity of the user within the token as the username of the user we have got. So in this case, what we shall say, the subject is going to be equal to db user dot username. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and raise an HTTP exception in case this user does not exist. Let me close this. So what we have here is checking if the user exists and if their password matches what is in the database. Then what we're going to do is to create an access token and as well create a refresh token. So I'm going to go ahead and also create a refresh token. In this case, what we shall do is to say authorize, but in this case we shall create a refresh token, and then we shall also say that the subject is going to be db user, but in this case what we shall pass in is going to be the username. So let me correct this. So after correcting this, I'm going to come right here, and what I'll do is to return a response containing this object with the access and the refresh token. So what I'll do is to return a response. So I'm going to go ahead right here at the top of the code. So I'll say from, in this case I'll say from FastAPI dot encoders. What I'm going to do is to import the JSONable encoder. So if you're observant, this JSONable encoder is similar to JSONify in Flask as it turns a dictionary into a JSON. So in this case, if we want to like create a dictionary containing our access token and our refresh token, we're going to create it as, so I can say, in this case, I can say that our response is going to be equal to, let's say, a dictionary containing the access token, which is going to have the value of the access token. The refresh token is going to contain the value of the refresh token. So what we can do is to just return JSONable encoder, and in this case what we shall pass in is going to be our response. So what we need to also do is specify our status code. So I'll come and specify it right in here. So I'll say status code is going to be equal to 200. I also need to check if this is not made. So what I'll do is to say else, or actually what I'll do is to just raise. So we're going to raise an HTTP exception in this case. So what I'll do is to come and import HTTP exception from FastAPI. So I'm going to say from FastAPI dot exceptions. I'm going to import HTTP exception. So right after doing this, I'm going to come right here, and what I'll do is to say this is going to be an HTTP exception, and within this I'll specify the status code and then the detail. So the status code in this case is going to be equal to, so I'll import status from FastAPI. We have status already, so what I'll do is to come and say this is going to be status dot HTTP. So in this case we shall pass a 400 error, which is bad request, and then what our detail is going to be, our detail is going to be equal to valid username or password. So hoping that everything is working, let's go ahead and test this route. So right here I have my Insomnia open. So I've been using a Swagger UI, but in this case I'm going to use the Insomnia. So I'm going to come and create this request. So I'm going to create a request which I'm going to call login, and this is going to be a post request. Now this post request is going to be at localhost. This case is going to be 8000 slash login. So if I specify the body, it's going to be Json, and we shall specify the field. So in this case what we need is a username. The username in this case is going to be John Doe, and we're going to also provide a password. So our password is going to be let's say password. So if we run this, actually this is going to be at /auth /login. So if we run this, okay, our server is not running. So let's see, we're going to actually go ahead and run our server. So if I run the server with unicorn main app reload, it's going to run our server. So right now we see we have an error. We made a mistake. So let's go ahead and fix that. So if I go to the top right here, we are supposed to have encoders. Hoping that our server is going to run without errors. So if I go back to our Insomnia and make this request, right now we see that we can generate an access and a refresh token. So right now this access token is going to enable us to access the different protected routes on our application. So the way we shall be doing this is to pass this token within our authorization header. So we are going to be protecting the various routes that we shall need to access with a token. So let's go ahead and see how we're going to do this. Alright, so let's go ahead and protect our route. So what I'm going to do is to go back to Visual Studio Code. And within our Visual Studio Code, let me first close this. I'm going to go ahead and protect our sample route. For example, if you wanted to access our root route, which returns hello. So let's say if I went to my Insomnia and made a request to, let's say, create a new request, it's going to be hello. So this is going to be a GET request. So for example, if we say localhost 8000 slash auth, and this is our root route. So if I send this, expect that we're going to get a message hello world. So what I'm going to do is to show you how we can protect such a route. So example, so that we can be able to require a token from our login so as to access it. So let's go ahead and see that. So I'm going to head over to Visual Studio Code. What I'm going to do is to go ahead and protect this route. So to do that, what I'm going to do is to actually come. I'll add the authorized dependency. So I'll say authorize is going to be of type of JWT, and then it's going to be a dependency. So I'll have to call the depends function right here. And after doing that, what I'll do is to come and try to protect this route. So the auth JWT the auth JWT is going to provide us with a method called the JWT required. The JWT required is going to help us to protect this route against accessing it without a token. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to try this within a try catch try except block. So what I'll do is to say try, and then what we shall do is to first pass a JWT required restriction. What I'll do is to come and say this is going to be authorized dot. In this case, we shall say JWT required. So after saying JWT required, then we are also going to accept, for example, if we have an error, so we're going to accept any exception that may arise as, so I'm just going to call it as E. And now after, we shall raise an error in case they have not provided a token. So what we shall do is to raise an HTTP exception, and then the status code of this one is going to be, so this will be status code 2. So this will be status HTTP. This will be 401 unauthorized. So it's going to be unauthorized. And then what we shall have as our detail, so I'll add a comma right here, detail. So our detail, this case is going to be invalid token. So in case we have an invalid token, it's going to be valid token. We are going to just be able to return this error. So let's save this and try to access this route. If I go back to Insomnia and try to access this route, we're going to see that it's going to give us the detail of invalid token, since we have not provided the token in our authorization header. So I'm going to go and do is to go back to our login. I'm going to send this request once again. So we're going to be availed with the access and the refresh token. What I'm going to do is to come right here, and I'm going to copy this access token. After copying this access token, I'm going to go to the header section within our hello auth route. So you need to go and provide an authorization header, and then this is going to be of bearer. Then I'll paste in the token. So in this case, if I send this, we now get the message. So without the JWT, we cannot be able to acquire this message. But with the JWT in our authorization header, we can be able to access this specific route. So we're also going to go ahead and implement a route that's going to help us to refresh our tokens. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to come and do is to come right here. And what we shall do here is to provide our token. So we're going to provide our refresh token and then be able to create a refresh token. Let's go ahead and look at how to do that. All right, so let's see how to create refresh tokens. So we create refresh tokens by creating a route that's going to refresh our tokens. So this route is only to be accessed in case we have our refresh token. So for example, if we need to protect this route by having users to be able to provide the refresh token they acquire on login to this route, and then they'll be able to access a new token. So let's go ahead and see how to implement. So I'm going to go just below our code. So this route is going to be refreshing tokens. So we're going to go ahead and say at auth router. So this is going to be a get, and then what we're going to say is this is going to be a refresh. This route is going to be slash refresh. So what I'm going to do right here is to come, and what I'm going to do is say def. So it's going to be an async function. So it's going to be async def. Then what we're going to do is to refresh a token. So this is also going to take in our authorized dependency. So we need to create an authorized dependency by saying authorized is of type auth JWT, and then is equal to depends. So this is a dependency, and then after doing that, the next thing we're going to do is to simply come and protect this with a special function. So in this case, we said we needed to protect this with at JWT required for. So here we said authorized.jwt required. Now we're going to do here is to say authorized.jwt refresh token JWT refresh required. So what we're going to do is to come and say right here, we're going to try, and what we shall do is to protect this with JWT. So we see that various methods available to us right here. So we're going to choose the JWT refresh token required. Then we shall also accept. So what we're going to accept, so we're going to come and say accept any exception. So we need to say accept any exception as E. Then we shall raise. So it's going to be raised. Sorry for that. So this is going to be HTTP exception. And then right here, we are going to provide the status code. So our status code is going to be equal to status HTTP 401 and authorized. And then the detail of this is going to be, so here we're going to just say please, right? And actually provide a valid refresh token. So here we are going to require provide a valid refresh token. So right here, after all this passed, what we need to do is actually create our token, our new token. So we shall say access token is going to be equal to, so in this case we shall say authorize dot. So in this case it's going to be create access token, and then what we shall do is to provide the subject. So the subject in this case, we are going to require to get the current user's identity. So to get the current user's identity, what we're going to do is to say that our current user, so we can say our current user is going to be equal to authorize dot get. In this case, what we're going to do is to call the get JWT identity method. And this is going to have the information of our current user. So what we shall do is to just come right here and pass in our current user. So the subject in this case is the user who is logged in right now. So in this case we shall say subject to current user. So we're going to create a dictionary containing our tokens. So in this case what we shall do is to just return Json encoder, and we shall pass in a dictionary containing the access token and then the value of the access token. So this is going to be access token. Let's try and see what this is going to do. So if I save, hoping that our server is still running, so it's reloading. Our server is running, so let's go ahead and go back to our insomnia. When I go back to our insomnia, we need to create a new request. So this is going to be for refreshing token. So this is going to be a get method. We're going to create it. So what I'm going to do is to go to localhost. It's going to be 8000 slash auth slash refresh. And right here, what I'm going to do is to come within our headers. I'll provide authorization header. So this is going to be authorization. And then this authorization header be bearer. Now we shall require to have our access refresh token in this case. So I'll go to our login, try to log in the user with these credentials. So I'm going to send. So when we acquire our refresh token, I'm going to copy this refresh token, and we need to go ahead and access our refresh route. So I'll go to headers, And then here we have bearer, so I'll provide the refresh token. And when I send, so we see we have an error, so let's go and fix that. So pull up my terminal, so we see get JWT identity. Let's try to see. So this is actually, so this is going to be authorized dot get JWT subject, and when you save, server is going to reload. So I'm going to send our request again. So I'll head over to our insomnia and try to send this. Right now we see that we can be able to access to get another fresh access token. So in this video, we've learned how to carry out JWT authentication, and we've learned about fast JWT auth. So thank you for watching, guys, and if you have anything to say about this video, please go ahead and leave a comment down. Also go ahead and like this video. Please subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye.